She came in humming. That was the first insult. Not the words she said, not even the smirk. The humming. Off-key, light, a little too pleased with herself. Like a teenager who thinks she got away with sneaking in past curfew. She had on one of those silk robes she used to only wear on our anniversaries, back when anniversaries meant something. This time, it was sliding off her shoulder like a badge of conquest. She had wine in her hand. Cabernet. My bottle. The one I'd been saving for the quarterly close. I was in the living room with my laptop open, running a last pass on a proposal that had taken me 3 weeks to perfect. A blind RFP. They didn't know who I was, and I preferred it that way. Half my work doesn't even carry my name anymore. I watched her reflection in the screen as she stood behind me, swaying like she'd just come back from a rooftop jazz bar, not someone else's hotel suite. "Don't be dramatic, Michael," she said. With that smile she saves for real estate agents and waiters she's flirting with to get free dessert. "It's just one night. With the man I've dreamt about since our marriage." The way she said it. No shame, no hesitation. Like she was giving me a weather update. And then she laughed. God, she laughed. That sharp, high-pitched cackle she uses when she wants to make sure everyone in the room knows she's in control. I didn't say anything. Didn't stand. Didn't throw the wine glass. Didn't ask who or why or any of the usual humiliating nonsense you hear in these stories. I just closed the laptop. The click of it made her pause. She tilted her head, expecting some kind of reaction. Maybe a slammed door or a broken dish. Maybe tears. I stood up. No rush. Just stood. She didn't back up. She was still smiling. Still smug. I walked past her, turned the corner into my office, and locked the door behind me. The first laptop was for the proposal. The second one, the one behind the false panel in my cabinet, that one was for war. I powered it on. No logos. No stickers. No saved tabs. Just a hardline VPN and a login prompt. My screen flickered to life and landed on a clean white dashboard with black text and numbered tabs. Confidential Consultant Interface. Project ID, AMBRYX, 241. Codenamed Epsilon Merge. Estimated deal value, $3.8 billion. And under Key Parties and Risk Factors, there he was. Jason Kepler, SVP of Strategic Growth at Lanner Morel. Her fantasy. Her one night. The irony didn't even sting. I'd been looped into the Epsilon deal 6 months earlier as a compliance integrity auditor. My work had been quiet. Off-the-record reviews of executive communication trails, background scans, conflict of interest triggers. I wasn't hired to build the deal. I was hired to make sure it didn't detonate. What they didn't know, and what she clearly didn't either, was that one of the audit triggers we'd built into the risk model involved personal entanglements between leadership and non-disclosed stakeholders. It was obscure language. Legalese. The kind you skim past when you're looking for your bonus clause. And most of the time, it's useless. But every once in a while, someone gifts you exactly what you need. I clicked into the flag dossier I'd half-written 2 months earlier. It had been a hunch at the time. Jason's recurring travel overlaps, an unusual pattern of hotel stays, inconsistent calendar entries around his scheduled briefings with senior counsel. Nothing concrete. Not then. But now? Now I had motive. I had proximity. I had her smile still echoing in my head. And I had access. See, the NDA I signed wasn't your average boilerplate. It was an enforcement clause tied to ethical disclosures, which meant that if any risk surfaced, especially something that violated disclosure obligations, I had both the right and the responsibility to escalate. And I knew exactly where to send it. I pulled up a draft email I'd prepped weeks ago. Subject line, urgent, undisclosed risk regarding executive dossier. The body was clean. No accusations, no personal language. Just dates, logs, hotel records, internal emails, and a cross-reference snapshot of Jason's travel activity tied to one very specific companion, my wife. I didn't hit send. Not yet. She thought she'd walked into my life and detonated it with a glass of wine and a throwaway line. She thought I was still the man who held her purse at conferences and edited her resumes while she flirted with other men over networking dinners. She thought she still had control. But here's the thing about men like me. We don't scream. We don't beg. We don't threaten. We wait. We document. And when the moment's right, we pull one pin, and the room goes silent. Outside, I heard her laugh again. Watching some garbage show she only liked when she was tipsy. Probably texting him. I leaned back in my chair, hands behind my head, and finally smiled. Okay, I thought. Let's see how dramatic this gets. Sunday morning, the sun came up like nothing had happened. That's what always gets me. the way nature doesn't flinch. The birds still chirp, the coffee still brews, and the woman who detonated your marriage still sleeps diagonally across your bed like she owns it. She didn't even wake up when I got up at 6. Not when I fed the dog. Not when I made pancakes and left hers untouched on the stove. She stirred slightly when I took the mower out of the shed, but that was it. Just a stretch and a muttered yawn. Nothing resembling guilt. She didn't expect consequences. That much was obvious. To her, it was over. She had dropped her little truth bomb, smiled, drank her wine, and assumed that Michael, good old doormat Michael, would bury it, like I buried everything else. The sarcasm, the eye rolls at dinner, the way she called my consulting cute whenever her friends asked what I did. It was all part of the routine, and she thought the routine would continue. I mowed the lawn with deliberate precision, the kind I reserve for days when I need to think. The grass didn't need it. I'd done it just last week. But there was something about the sound, the push, the clean lines, that helped me sort the mess in my head into rows just as neat. I checked the mail, dropped by the hardware store for some screws I didn't need, picked up some groceries I already had. Anything to stay moving. Anything to keep the rage from rising into something messy and loud. Because I didn't need loud. I needed leverage. Back home, she was still in bed. She'd switched the TV in the bedroom to some Hallmark rerun. I heard the canned laughter spill down the stairs as I unpacked the bags. She didn't call out. No apology. No second thoughts. She just lived in the delusion that everything would smooth over, like it always had. It didn't surprise me. She never really believed I had teeth. By the time dinner rolled around, she was padding around the kitchen barefoot, sipping water, asking if I wanted Thai or Italian takeout. As if she hadn't told me less than 24 hours ago that she finally slept with the man she'd been lusting over for years. I told her I wasn't hungry. She ordered anyway. Red curry, mild, extra rice. My usual. The audacity was almost beautiful. I went to my study around 8. Left the door open this time. Let her hear the keyboard clicking, the paper rustling. Let her assume I was back to normal. That I digested the betrayal like I'd digest the curry I didn't eat. Predictable Michael. Reliable Michael. The man who doesn't make waves. At 9:30, I left my laptop open on the desk. Not in an obvious way, just accessible. My inbox glowed quietly in the lamplight, a single draft sitting at the top of the pile. Subject line, urgent, undisclosed risk regarding executive dossier. She passed by once, twice. The third time, she slowed down. I didn't turn. I didn't look at her. I just kept flipping through a printed spreadsheet with a red pen in my hand. She stopped behind me. Didn't say a word. I could feel her reading the subject line over my shoulder. Her breath caught, almost imperceptibly. Then she padded off toward the stairs. The draft remained unopened. She didn't ask, didn't confront. But the air in the room changed. Her confidence, so bulletproof just yesterday, was starting to ripple. She didn't know what was in the email. Didn't know if it was about her. Or him. Or both. But she knew it wasn't nothing. And that was the point. Upstairs, the TV came back on, louder than before. Overcompensating. Drowning out her thoughts. She was pacing. I could hear it. Soft feet on hardwood. The occasional creak near the closet. She was spiraling just enough to matter, but not enough to act. Perfect. I walked out of the study an hour later, casually, laptop in hand. She was curled on the couch now, phone in her lap, pretending to scroll. She looked up and gave me a hesitant smile, like she wasn't sure what version of me would emerge. I just nodded and walked past her into the kitchen. Poured myself a drink. I'm thinking of flying out to Dallas next week, I said casually, swirling the glass. Might be a new project coming up. Her eyes flicked up, a twitch in the corner of her mouth. Dallas? For what client? Still in talks, I said, sipping. You wouldn't know them. I could see it behind her eyes, the math, the guesses. She wanted to ask more, but she didn't. She just nodded, then said something about needing to call her mom tomorrow. We both pretended the tension wasn't there, but it sat between us, humming like an exposed wire. She went to bed early, left the lights on in the hallway, like she used to do when she was nervous about storms. But this wasn't weather. This was warning, and the countdown had begun. At 8 a.m. sharp, Jason Kepler stepped out of his town car in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He was the kind of man who didn't check mirrors. He expected reflections to adjust to him. The concierge greeted him by name. His espresso was already waiting in a to-go tumbler, and by the time he reached the executive elevator, his watch buzzed with the morning's agenda. Pre-merger briefings, PR team alignment, final legal walkthrough before the Epsilon deal was announced in the press by end of week. He was riding the high. His moment had come. After years of pushing, positioning, and sleeping upward, Jason was finally walking into the boardroom as the man everyone would remember. He had plans. Champagne for lunch. A dinner reservation under a fake name with my wife. His new reward. He told her once, in a message I'd intercepted through metadata artifacts. This merger is my coronation. He should have picked a better throne. As the elevator doors opened onto the 32nd floor, his assistant, Claire, was already waiting. Except this time, she wasn't smiling. She held a company phone in one hand, her personal one in the other, both glowing with unread notifications. "Sir," she started, voice cracking in a way that instantly short-circuited Jason's mood. We have a problem." He didn't look concerned. Not yet. Jason operated on the belief that problems existed to validate his genius. He snatched the work phone, expecting a vendor delay, maybe a logistics hiccup. Instead, what stared back at him was a flagged internal alert with a red banner across the top. Confidential, priority 1 disclosure escalation. He opened it. Attached, a detailed PDF report from a masked whistleblower, tagged through an anonymous compliance portal used by third-party regulators during high-stakes acquisitions. The first page was blunt. Undisclosed romantic relationship between executive-level officer and stakeholder tied to internal RFP documentation. Possible breach of SEC-mandated transparency. Potential manipulation of conflict of interest declarations. The second page, hotel records. Every stay he booked under his own company's expense account cross-referenced against my wife's frequent flyer ID. The timestamps didn't lie. The overlaps were bolded. Key cities, San Diego, Chicago, Charleston. Not a single business meeting scheduled during any of them. The third page, cell phone logs, dumped from a data scrubber API and correlated against internal compliance metadata. Dozens of late-night calls, weekend messages, all unreported. And then the nail. A spreadsheet detailing the section of the SEC's disclosure rules requiring full transparency in relationships that could result in biased decisions regarding future assets, acquisitions, or shifts in corporate equity. Jason's hands trembled for the first time that morning. He closed the report and turned toward the glass wall at the end of the hallway. His reflection looked paler than he remembered. He tried to steady his breathing, glancing around as if the leak might be hiding in a corner. "What else?" he asked Claire, his voice low, nearly a growl. She hesitated. "The acquiring firm's CEO has received a second email. It's not in our system. It's direct." His blood drained. "How do you know that?" She didn't answer with words. She turned her phone toward him. A screenshot from a friend in the other firm. An email with the subject, Supplemental Risk Disclosure, Executive Entanglement, Epsilon Merge. Sent from a one-time use Proton address. No traceable metadata. The attachments were the same. Jason turned on his heel and stormed into the nearest empty office. He slammed the door shut. The windows didn't stop sound. People heard it. He started pacing, fast. Pulled out his personal phone and dialed. Once. Twice. Straight to voicemail. My wife wasn't answering. Because she didn't know yet. The boardroom down the hall was already filling with partners, lawyers, and executives buzzing about numbers, post-merger integrations, and stock bumps. Jason leaned against the doorframe, suddenly unsure if he should walk in. The voice in his head, the one that used to whisper seductions and strategies, was now screaming something he hadn't heard before. "You're not in control anymore." He opened his laptop, tried logging into the data room. Access was delayed, probably flagged, probably locked, pending internal review. In a single hour, the language around him changed. From success and rollout to audit hold and escalation protocol. People whispered louder. Eyebrows furrowed deeper. Claire peeked in, her voice tighter now. "Legal wants to know if you've disclosed any personal conflicts that might affect decision-making." Jason didn't answer. Because suddenly, the answer mattered. The empire he built on charm, shortcuts, and charm again was cracking. Not because of a mistake, but because someone had been watching. Quietly, carefully, waiting, not to ruin him, but to reveal him. And now, the reveal had begun. Monday afternoon, 2:16 p.m., two separate legal teams, one in San Francisco, the other in New York, paused the entire due diligence pipeline. Not slowed, not hesitated, paused. As in, red-stamped every open document, froze access credentials, suspended joint briefings, and shut down the virtual data room with a forward update. Pending ethical compliance review. The Joint Task Force, which had been coordinating late-night calls for weeks, now sat silently in their respective offices, watching the cursor blink where projections used to live. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but the temperature had dropped. Something was wrong. Not financial, not technical, ethical. That word always hits harder, because it doesn't just affect spreadsheets, it stains names. At Lanner Morell's headquarters, the senior legal officer, Annette Giroux, stood in front of the glass boardroom wall holding a printed version of the whistleblower document. Her expression hadn't changed since it hit her inbox 3 hours earlier. She held it like it was radioactive, pages in one hand, pen tapping against the other. She read aloud to the 12 stunned executives seated in front of her. Failure to disclose internal conflicts of interest tied to romantic entanglements may trigger immediate ethical review and invalidate merger terms under Clause 7C of the Joint Integrity Framework. Dead silence. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered, "We should have known." Across the table, a junior associate leaned toward his laptop and whispered, "They're rerunning background scans on the SVP's personal accounts. Compliance bots are pulling private logs. It's spreading fast." Back at our house, she hadn't moved from the bedroom window in 15 minutes. She was staring at the backyard like it would deliver answers. Her phone was shaking in her hand. She tried calling Jason 3 times. No answer. Not even voicemail now. Just a hard disconnect, like he'd powered the phone off. The 4th time she called, she tried whispering, "Jason, please. Pick up. I think Michael. I think he did something. He's too calm. He's not yelling. He hasn't said anything. He just watches." She hung up. Panic had set in now, but not the fire alarm kind. No, this was quieter. Slower. The realization that the grenade she'd dropped Saturday night hadn't exploded immediately. It had been pulled, placed neatly on the table, and left to tick. And she didn't know where Michael was in the blast radius. She started pacing, fingers tapping against the phone, debating what to do. She opened her laptop, logged into Slack. Nothing. The private channel she shared with Jason disappeared. Not archived. Deleted. She checked her calendar for their next off-site check-in. That lie she sold to HR about quarterly planning retreats. The event was gone. Not canceled. Erased. Her email pinged. One new message from legal. Subject, notice of potential internal review, immediate action required. She read the first line twice. "We have received preliminary documentation indicating possible breach of fiduciary transparency via romantic entanglements with personnel connected to the Epsilon acquisition. Please be advised your presence may be required for clarification interviews." And there it was, her name, formally looped in. Not protected by Jason's status. Not hidden by proximity. Not deflected by charm. She fumbled for her phone again, called him one more time. This time, she didn't even wait for a ring. She just started talking into the silence. Michael wouldn't, would he? She asked it like a question, but it came out like a plea. She was trying to convince herself that I wouldn't do this. That the man who edited her grant applications, who ghostwrote her first conference speech, who brought her soup when she had the flu and never asked for praise, that man couldn't be behind this. Because if I was, then everything she believed about how power works, how men work, was wrong. And she didn't have a playbook for that. Downstairs, I was in the garage, tuning the engine of my father's old Mustang. Just enough noise to mask the second phone call I was making. This one to a private contact at a risk analytics firm monitoring the situation from the outside. I wasn't breaking any rules. I was fulfilling a clause in my NDA that required external reporting if internal parties showed signs of coordinated obfuscation. Jason hadn't disclosed. She hadn't either. They gambled that no one was watching. But I had eyes everywhere. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from Jason's assistant. "Please be advised. All communications are being routed through counsel until further notice. Jason will not be available for unscheduled contact." Translation, she'd been cut loose. And for the first time, she felt it. Not regret, not guilt, but exposure. She walked back to the window, still gripping the phone like it could reverse time. Stared out into the empty yard where I had planted her favorite hydrangeas last spring. They were wilting, just like her illusion of control. She arrived at her office Tuesday morning pretending the world was still in one piece. Tailored blazer, designer heels, oversized sunglasses to hide the bags under her eyes. Her assistant, typically all chirpy greetings and iced lattes, barely made eye contact. Something was off in the air. It wasn't just the whispering behind glass or the way people glanced up from their monitors when she passed. It was the silence that followed, the unnatural pause, the weight of unspoken knowledge hanging just outside her perception. She told herself it was nothing, that it'd blow over. That Jason, her brilliant, invincible Jason, was handling it. He always did. He had a way of brushing off problems with a smile and a "don't worry, I've got this" that made her feel protected and chosen. Until now. She was barely seated when her intercom buzzed. "There's a courier here. Wants to drop something directly." She blinked. Courier? From who? Didn't say. No signature required. A quiet alarm went off in the back of her mind, but she waved it away. Send him in. The door opened. A man in plain clothes walked in. Not uniformed, not chatty, no clipboard. He handed her a single large envelope, nodded once, and left without a word. No return address. No logo. Just her name, printed in stark black letters. She waited a beat, then opened it. The first thing she saw, a glossy, high-resolution photo of her at the Four Seasons in Boston. June 3rd. Her hand on Jason's chest. He was laughing. She was leaning in. A moment frozen with damning intimacy. The second, a screenshot of a Slack message, hers. "Michael's harmless. I've got him handled. Just focus on the deal, baby." The third, an excerpt from SEC Regulation SK, Item 401, highlighted text outlining executive disclosure obligations, particularly concerning intimate entanglements that may influence deal flow or fiduciary outcomes. Attached was the clause from the merger contract where Jason had initialed, affirming no undisclosed conflicts. And finally, a sticky note. Yellow. No logo. Just 5 words, written in her husband's handwriting. "You knew who he was when you married him. You forgot." Her mouth went dry. She flipped through the contents again, faster now, hands trembling slightly. The timestamps weren't vague. They were precise. Every hotel, every call, even the exact moment she'd forwarded Jason one of Michael's edited RFP templates, so Jason could refine his strategy. It was all in there. Traced, logged, timestamped, cataloged like evidence. And it was evidence. She realized that now. This wasn't just Michael reacting. This was Michael prosecuting. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number. It rang once, then went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. On the third try, it didn't even ring. Just an automated message. "The number you have dialed is not accepting calls at this time." She opened her messages. Typed, "Michael, we need to talk." Send. A bounce back appeared instantly. Delivery failed. User has enabled legal-only communication. What the hell did that even mean? She stared at the screen, heart pounding. She tried WhatsApp. Nothing. Signal. No response. Email. No reply. She went to his LinkedIn, only to find herself blocked. Not unfollowed, blocked. Her mind raced. Was this really happening? How had he moved so fast? How had he, quiet, beige, background Michael, become this phantom with reach? She looked back at the sticky note. You knew who he was. She did. At least, she thought she did. He was the man who made her coffee every morning, who drove her to conferences and let her shine, who never demanded credit when she stole his phrasing or used his frameworks and pitches. The man who always stayed behind, always smiled politely when she downplayed his work. He was invisible, and now he was everywhere. Her office phone rang. She jumped. It was HR. "We need you in conference C. It's regarding a compliance matter." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She nodded, knowing they couldn't see her. "Yes, of course. I'll be right there." She stood, shaky, gathered the envelope, slipped it into her briefcase, careful not to crumple the note. As she walked past her assistant's desk, the younger woman looked up, eyes wide, pitying. But she didn't say anything. No one did. Because in that moment, everyone knew what she was only beginning to understand. Michael hadn't just vanished from her life. He'd erased her safety net, cut the cords, locked the exits, and she was now alone, suspended over a fire she helped ignite. Tuesday evening. The room was cold, sterile, intentionally stripped of warmth. Conference room 19B, top floor of Kepler Tower, behind a biometric lock and a wall of NDAs. The kind of room where secrets go to die or metastasize into lawsuits. Every phone placed face down into a black felt-lined tray by the door. No devices. No side glances. Just 12 men and women who realized, too late, that they'd underestimated the wrong person. Jason sat at the far end of the table, silent. His usual smirk replaced by a flat stare. His eyes darted to the wall clock every few seconds, as if time itself might offer an exit. The CEO of Lanner Morel, Dominic Riles, stood at the head. C-levels, VPs, senior legal, external counsel. No one was relaxed. The room buzzed, not with voices, but with unspoken dread. "Let's get this out of the way," Dominic began, voice low and tight. We are exposed. The acquiring firm has placed the deal on indefinite pause pending ethical clarification. Translation: the damn thing is dead unless we bury whatever just surfaced in the last 36 hours. He dropped a manila folder on the table. This, he jabbed a finger at it, is what came through their back channel. Whistleblower report. Risk flag. SEC trigger language. You all saw the summary. The folder was thick. He didn't open it. No one needed to. They'd all memorized the highlights: romantic entanglement, non-disclosed relationship, internal material sharing, potential breach of merger integrity, Clause 7C. And one more thing, the name. Michael. Who was he really? Someone asked. I thought he was just her husband. A hobby consultant. Heads turned toward Jason. He didn't respond. He looked like he might throw up. A woman from legal, eyes hollow from 2 nights without sleep, leaned forward. We ran a deeper check. Everyone stiffened. Michael Tanner, independent compliance strategist, operates through a shell consultancy with rotating subcontractors and intentionally anonymized contracts. But last October, he was temporarily embedded with a task force tied to the Regulatory Integrity Review Board that's been working with our buyers. The silence hit like a gunshot. He's on their side, someone whispered. No, she replied, almost too calmly. He's not on anyone's side. He wasn't planted. He was requested. Specifically, for his discretion and track record. He didn't submit a whistleblower report. Not in the traditional sense. He flagged anomalies. He compiled data. He sent it through the required disclosure window only after internal parties failed to log their conflicts. Another exec asked, then why is it traceable back to him? The VP of Strategic Affairs finally spoke. He looked like he'd aged a decade since the weekend. Because he wanted it to be. The room turned toward him. He didn't shout. Didn't leak it to press. He didn't weaponize it for PR. He used protocol. Precision. Every word in the disclosure aligns with our merger charter. Every attachment is time-stamped and cross-verified. He let the data speak. And when it was loud enough, he let them trace it. But why? Someone finally blurted. For what? Revenge? Ego. Jason let out a brittle laugh. Not joyful. Not mocking. Just hollow. Because he was watching the whole time. And we thought he was a ghost. He looked up at the others now. Not to ask for sympathy, but to confess something closer to awe. I used his pitch template for the Epsilon prep deck. Literally copy-pasted it. He swallowed. She said it would impress the board. He'd written it months earlier. For a different firm. I didn't even know he was looped in. Dominic gritted his teeth. You plagiarized an embedded compliance officer's framework for a deal he was shadow auditing? Jason didn't nod. He didn't need to. Jesus Christ, Dominic whispered. The woman from legal side. This isn't just a betrayal. It's poetic. That word, poetic, stung more than anyone expected. Because it was true. Every piece of this was deliberate. The data wasn't leaked, it was released. Each page of the report followed a breadcrumb trail none of them saw coming. The matches weren't lit by anger. They were arranged carefully, logically, professionally, by someone they dismissed as irrelevant. Dominic picked up the folder again, shaking his head. You know what I realized reading this? No one answered. He didn't out us. He didn't go rogue. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't even demand anything. He just laid it all out. Like he knew we'd self-destruct if given enough time. The external counsel finally broke his silence. We need to notify insurers and start preparing contingency statements. And Jason, Dominic added, turning to the man he once called his golden boy. You're going to step back? Quietly. Today. Jason nodded. No fight left in him. No one mentioned her name. Not directly. But they all knew. She wasn't just Jason's entanglement. She was the fuse. The liability they didn't see coming. Because she brought him in under false pretense. And because none of them bothered to ask. Who is Michael Tanner, really? Now they knew. And they would never forget. By Wednesday morning, she'd given up on Jason. He hadn't called. Not once. Not a word since his access was pulled, and the board forced him to step back indefinitely. She only learned about it through whispers at work. 2 interns gossiping in the break room, not knowing she was just around the corner, frozen mid-step as they muttered about the golden boy being unceremoniously benched. The term hit her like a slap, because she'd once used it herself, unceremonious, to describe another woman's fall from grace. Back when she thought she was untouchable. Now she was watching it unfold in real time. And no one was reaching out to stop it. Not Jason. Not her colleagues. Not even the old friends who used to orbit her social events like satellites. Always eager to be near the glow. Which is why, After a sleepless night and a morning full of half-written apologies she never sent, she opened her contacts list and scrolled with shaking fingers until she found the name, Harold D. Freeman, investment lawyer, longtime family friend, a man who once held her on his shoulders at her 5th birthday party and had given a toast at her wedding with mist in his eyes. He'd know what to do. She hit call. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Harold, thank God, she breathed, already unraveling. I need your help. It's bad. The firm's in free fall, Jason's frozen out, I'm being looped into ethics reviews, and Michael's not talking to me. Everything's happening so fast, and I need advice. I need to know what's salvageable. You always said if I ever needed. His voice cut her off like a razor. You're calling now? The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was judgment. What? She said, taken aback. Harold, I wouldn't call unless. I know exactly why you're calling, he said. You want to know what can be saved. Legally, financially, socially. What little leverage you might still have in the burn pile you set on fire. She blinked, stunned. This isn't fair. You don't know the full story. Oh, I do, he said flatly. Michael briefed me 3 weeks ago. Everything in her chest collapsed inward. I advised him on disclosure windows, Harold continued, unemotional. Told him when to escalate, how to keep distance, which paths left the cleanest legal footprint. Her voice cracked. You helped him. I warned him. She tried to speak. Failed. Then, finally, why? A pause. Then came the line that would burn her from the inside out. Because he said you'd test him. I told him to wait until you did. It wasn't rage in his tone. It was regret. The kind people say for watching a train wreck they couldn't stop because the conductor had already closed his eyes. She tried to muster the performance, the soft quiver, the humble inflection. Harold, you've known me my whole life. Yes, he said sharply. I have. That's why I know when you're lying. And it's also why I told him to prepare quietly, not loudly. Because men like Michael don't yell. They build exits. The silence that followed wasn't shared. It was one-sided. He'd already made peace. She hadn't. Michael trusted you, she whispered. No, Harold said. Michael trusted you. I just made sure he had a parachute when you lit the engine on fire. The line went dead. She stood in the middle of her living room, phone still in hand, face drained of color. The carpet beneath her felt like it was shifting, like her entire house had been built on sand, and she was only just now noticing. She tried calling back. No answer. She texted. Please. We need to talk. Nothing. She opened her laptop, stared at the email threads from legal piling up. New phrases stood out now: willful concealment, failure to disclose, reputational breach, potential exposure. She closed the screen. For the first time in years, she was completely alone. Jason had vanished. Michael had turned to smoke. Her professional allies were backing away, one by one. And now Harold, her fallback, her moral safety net, had revealed that he'd been standing in the other camp the whole time. Not spying. Waiting. And now she understood something she hadn't when she laughed in Michael's face days earlier. She hadn't hurt a weak man. She'd betrayed a silent strategist. And he'd simply given her enough rope to test the strength of their vows and hang her future on the result. Thursday morning came bitter and gray. The kind of sky that doesn't just threaten rain. It dares you to step outside without an umbrella. She dressed carefully anyway. Conservative blazer, pearl earrings, low heels. Makeup light, hair pinned back just so. The look of control. Of a woman unshaken. It was a costume. She pulled into the lot of her downtown office at 7:58 a.m., 2 minutes early like always, her Range Rover sliding into the executive row like it still belonged there. A man in a delivery van glanced up from his coffee and did a double take. She didn't know if it was recognition or curiosity. Lately, they looked the same. She walked with purpose across the marble-tiled lobby, nodding once to the security guard she never bothered to learn the name of. He didn't nod back. Her access badge hit the scanner with a clean swipe and a hopeful blink. Red light. Access denied. She froze. Swiped again. Red. She turned toward the guard. He didn't move. Another woman from accounting, arms full of spreadsheets and breakfast, breezed through the security doors behind her without so much as a pause. No issues. Just a glance in her direction, short, confused, then quickly avoided. A phone rang. She turned around to find 2 HR representatives standing in the corner of the lobby, already watching her. The older one, a woman with tight curls and tighter lips, stepped forward. She was holding a manila folder. A sad little thing. No briefcase. No laptop. No apology. We need to speak with you. In the lobby? She asked, voice sharp, indignant. In private, if you'd prefer, the woman replied. But you no longer have floor access, and your laptop has been suspended. She opened the folder. On top, a single sheet of paper. Voluntary resignation agreement. Typed. Predated. I didn't resign, she snapped, throat suddenly dry. The woman didn't flinch. No, but after legal review, it was determined that your continued presence on site poses a reputational risk to both the merger and the firm's public image. Reputational risk. She'd used that phrase herself before, on others. Low performers. Scandals. Missteps that embarrassed the brand. She'd watched from this very lobby as others had been quietly ushered out with tight smiles and sealed envelopes. Now it was her turn. Her co-workers were arriving in waves now, flowing past the glass like fish in a tank. Many paused, just slightly, just long enough to register her face, the envelope, the frozen badge scanner, the HR staff. No one waved. No one offered help. No one asked if she was okay. She glanced back at the resignation form. It was thick with clauses. Standard language. A non-disclosure covering all aspects of internal investigation. A severance offer, barely a quarter of what she was worth. And at the bottom, a line to sign away her access. Her ID. Her history. Her future. This is absurd, she said, her voice cracking just a little too high. I built this office. I helped land Epsilon before Jason even pitched the deal. You don't just erase someone like me because of personal issues. The younger HR rep, the one who hadn't spoken yet, cleared his throat. This isn't about personal issues. It's about trust. And you signed a disclosure agreement 6 years ago when you were promoted. Section 12. Relationships that may influence internal decision-making are to be declared immediately. Her jaw clenched. He was never. Jason has already signed his paperwork, the older woman said. The words landed like a punch to the ribs. Jason had signed. Probably yesterday. Maybe Monday. Maybe the moment his name got flagged. And he hadn't told her. She looked down at the paper again. Her hand hovered over the pen clipped to the folder's edge. Her vision blurred just enough to smear the words. The bottom line stared up at her, hungry and inevitable. She signed. They handed her a sealed white envelope marked Final Pay. Another marked Personal Belongings. A third, larger one, unmarked but clearly containing the bulk of her office desk. The way it had been packed felt surgical. Impersonal. Her phone buzzed. A group chat lighting up with celebratory emojis and digital champagne gifts. Someone had made partner. Not her. She walked out of the building, envelope under one arm, shoulders squared as much as they could be. Outside, the rain had finally started. Light at first, then harder. She stood on the curb, watching cars pass. No ride waiting, no umbrella. Her reputation wasn't just bruised. It was radioactive. And somewhere, she didn't know where, Michael was watching. Not vindictive. Not gloating. Just quiet. Like the rain. Like a storm that doesn't roar. Just falls. Relentlessly. Until everything is washed clean. It was barely past 4 in the morning when her phone lit up. 1 missed call. 2. 3. She stirred in the dark, face half buried in the pillow, brain fogged with exhaustion and denial. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the storm outside, soft but steady. Her hair was still damp from the rain the night before. Her resignation papers were folded on the dining table, ignored. The white envelopes sat unopened next to a wine glass with a lipstick smear that didn't belong to confidence anymore. The 4th ring she picked up. Hello. What did you do? Jason's CEO, Dominic Riles. His voice wasn't just loud, it was unraveling. 2 banks have pulled their financing. 2. Gone. Pulled everything. Do you understand what that means? She sat up in bed, blinking, heart hammering. Dominic, wait, what? I don't. The acquiring firm just suspended the deal. Not paused. Suspended. Our legal's calling it a preemptive containment action, pending further disclosures. They used that exact phrase. Who the hell is your husband? She swallowed. I told you he's a consultant. He's no one. He's not no one. Riles roared. He was embedded with the pre-acquisition ethics review team. We didn't know until today. You brought him into proximity. You exposed us to a compliance conflict, and now the entire regulatory framework is under revision. The SEC is watching our emails in real time. Do you understand the magnitude of this? She couldn't speak. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't tell him what he was asking. Who is your husband? She didn't know anymore. She thought she did. Michael had been soft-spoken, patient, careful. The man who made sure her tires were always aired and who once stayed up until 3 a.m. to help her prepare for a presentation he wasn't even invited to. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't hold grudges. He didn't need credit. She thought his silence meant submission. She had no idea it meant strategy. Dominic, she croaked, eyes burning. It's not what you think. He's not. He wouldn't. I've got 18 executives ready to walk. A shareholder lawsuit already forming, and 2 PR teams drafting statements in case this thing goes public. The due diligence trail? Immaculate. You know how hard that is to do and leave breadcrumbs? He signed nothing, gave no interviews, said nothing. He just assembled the facts and left them where they'd be found. And now we've been found. She stared at the ceiling, her mouth dry, her pulse thudding in her ears. He was right. Michael never shouted, never made threats. He just let the house collapse from the inside and timed the detonation to land after everyone ignored the fire alarm. The line went quiet for a second. Then Riles said, quieter now, "Who exactly did you say your husband is?" She couldn't answer. She just couldn't. He hung up. She sat there, the screen glowing in her hand, casting pale light across the room. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened TV screen. Hair a mess, eyes puffy, shoulders slumped. Finally, she stood. She walked to the table, pulled out the manila folder Michael had left her days earlier, and flipped through it one more time. This time, slower. The final document wasn't legalese. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't angry. It was just a memo. At the bottom, cleanly printed, was one line. Submitted under Clause 9b, partner-to-partner trust breach disclosure, per pre-existing NDA. Clause 9b. It was a clause she hadn't noticed when he first explained his work. Buried in a contract she never asked about, back when she used to smile and say, "All your compliance stuff is boring. I'll just take your word for it." She took his word, and now he'd used it. Partner-to-partner trust breach disclosure. Not employer, not spouse, not consultant. Partner. He didn't go around her. He went through the one place she thought was safe, her relationship, and used it like a legal trigger. She dropped the folder, then dropped herself onto the floor next to it. Everything, every handshake, every speech she gave, every name she dropped, every corner she cut, had just evaporated under a single, clean, authorized action from the man she dismissed as forgettable. He hadn't screamed at her. He'd outgrown her, quietly, and now the last thing she ever built, her future, was in flames. And all she had left was a signature she didn't remember him collecting, and a silence that didn't forgive. Saturday, exactly 1 week after the night she laughed in his face and poured herself a victory glass of Cabernet, Michael Tanner stepped onto a stage she hadn't known he was even in the running for. The Lorman Institute of Corporate Ethics and Legacy Stewardship held its annual summit in a private Colorado lodge. Invite only, executive level, closed cameras except for a secure live stream granted to alumni and past speakers. She wouldn't have known about it at all if not for the link that arrived in her inbox at 10:52 a.m. Subject line, "You might want to watch this. HF. Harold." Of course. She stared at the link for a long time before clicking. By then, the video had already begun buffering. The image stuttered and blurred. Her Wi-Fi was unreliable ever since she'd been forced to cancel her high-speed corporate plan. When the picture cleared, there he was. Michael, on stage. Trim beard, charcoal suit, no tie. Calm, commanding, applauded. The camera panned across the audience. Executives, legal giants, compliance officers, financial gatekeepers. Some of the very people who'd once responded to her emails, who had shaken her hand at luncheons, who had attended panels she moderated at investor summits. Now they were standing. For him. The applause didn't die down quickly. It swelled, respectful, genuine. The kind of reaction reserved not for heroes, but for people who've quietly saved others from the fallout they never saw coming. Michael adjusted the mic. No notes in front of him. No teleprompter. Just him in a room full of power. "I was married," he began, voice steady, "to someone who believed silence was weakness." The room stilled. Total attention. "I disagree." She exhaled shakily, watching from the cracked screen of her old iPad. The same one he bought her 2 birthdays ago. The battery was failing, and the edges had splintered from being dropped too many times on too many tiled hotel floors. But the livestream kept playing, glitchy but persistent. "I've spent most of my professional life behind curtains," Michael continued. "Ghostwriting, consulting, reviewing, always in someone else's name. I thought that was safety. I thought invisibility was power. And it was for a while." He paused. Let it breathe. "But legacy," he said, scanning the room, "isn't just what you build. It's what survives betrayal. And silence, when used with precision, can speak louder than any microphone." She watched, frozen. Michael's face didn't gloat. It didn't smirk. There was no malice in his tone, no pleasure in her downfall. Just calm. Just truth. She whispered, barely audible even to herself. He was never just my husband. On screen, he smiled. Just faintly. And as if he'd heard her through the signal, through the crushed pixels of the live stream, he looked straight into the camera. I was just waiting for the moment she'd say it out loud, he said softly. And now, so has the world. The feed cut to applause. And she, the woman who once believed the game was hers to play, sat in the shadow of a man who never once needed to raise his voice to win.